Astronauts, Ingmar Bergman, and old-time rock and roll. It doesn't seem like they have much in common, but those three movies have one thing in common. They're all on my list of the year's best films, the top 10 films of 1983, and maybe some of them are even on the list of my colleague across the aisle here, Gene Siskel, the film critic of the Chicago Tribune.
Actually, all three are on my list, too. And across the aisle from me, Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. It's that time of year again, the beginning of the year, when film critics across the country recount the 10 best films of the year past. And Roger and I, working for separate competing newspapers, each have our own special choices. We'll show you some of our favorite scenes of the year, and then we're going to finish our show with our picks for the #1 best film of the year, followed by a complete list from 10 to 1 of the best films. We're going to hang you around to the end for that. But first, Roger begins with a musical.
I want to start out with a movie named Say Amen Somebody, which was without any question the best musical film of 1983, and I do include Flashdance in that opinion. Say Amen Somebody is a documentary, and it's about black gospel music, and it tells the story of two of the pioneers of gospel, and this movie is pure joy and pleasure from one end to the other. Here's a wonderful scene. Two singers named the O'Neill Twins sing a song with a great title, Jesus Dropped the Charges.
Them all away. Calvary, 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 Calvary. Case dismissed. Say it back.
Case dismissed. Case dismissed. I have the soundtrack album from this movie, and believe me, gets me started in the morning. Say Amen Somebody was made by George Nierenberg, who built it around tributes to two gospel pioneers, Dr. Thomas A. Dorsey and Mother Willie Mae Ford Smith. They're both on screen. They're both really charismatic. And this is one of those musical documentaries that is more entertaining than a musical, kind of like last year's movie on the top 10 list about the Weavers. This movie is still in limited release around the country. I think it's going to turn up on PBS later this year. I've seen it 5 different times, and it gave enormous joy and pleasure to every audience I've ever seen it with. Say Amen Somebody.
If the whole movie were the O'Neill Twins, I think I'd watch it every day. They are just fabulous, and that's a great number. For me, there was just too much talking. At the top of the film, I sort of backed into the music. That's why it isn't on my list, but gee, some of the music in it is just terrific.
You're right.
And now we swing over to my list, and one of my very favorite films of this past year, it's Terms of Endearment, the almost shockingly fresh drama about 30 years in the relationship between a mother and a daughter, with both characters saying things that you suspect that real mothers and real daughters say to each other, but that the movies, particularly American movies, rarely have had the courage to let them say to each other. Shirley MacLaine is the tight-fisted mother, and Deborah Winger is the equally iron-willed daughter, and here's a typical phone call between them.
Hello. Hi, Mother. Look, could we talk later? Because I got to get the boys off, and it's not a good time for me to be on the phone.
Don't be so inconsiderate. I'm all set to have a nice, good talk with you. Besides, you've got almost an hour to get the boys off. What's wrong?
Nothing.
Just stop right here. Tell me what it is.
Okay, Mother. I need some money. I need you to loan me some money. I really and truly need it, so will you? Oh, Mother, please don't be quiet. You know how hard that was for me to ask you. You can say no, but please don't be quiet.
Oh, I'm sorry, sweetheart. I was just thinking.
Thinking what?
How much I hate to part with money.
Well, I wouldn't have asked if... Don't yell. But I really think that I may be pregnant again.
Oh, no! Oh, no! Oh, no. And you're going to have it, I suppose.
Yes, of course. What's happening? happening to you anyway?
Oh, don't act like that's so terrible, Emma. I keep hearing about lots of bright young women who are having simple abortions.
Simple.
And then they get wonderful jobs. You can go right across the state to Colorado and have it.
I don't know why I tell you anything. I mean, I seem to like you less and less.
There are very few major stars like Shirley MacLaine who would allow themselves to play a character with lines like that. They'd probably want to soften it, make her nicer. Much of the praise of this movie has focused on the performances by Shirley MacLaine and Deborah Winger, and also Jack Nicholson in a terrific supporting role. But my admiration really goes to the writing of this film. I think it's the script by James L. Brooks that grabs our attention right away and tells us that we are going to meet characters in this movie who are as exciting, as original, as some of the most memorable characters we've ever met in our own real lives. You know what I want most of all next year? I want a sequel to this movie.
I never thought I'd hear you say you wanted a sequel.
Yes, I want to find out what happens to
They're real enough that you want to know what happens next. This movie is also way up at the top of my list of the best 10 films of the year. And of all the things I can think of to praise it for, one of the things that is best is the fact that it allows itself to have the unpredictability of real life. It doesn't start off, as so many movies do, in a given direction and have tunnel vision right down to the end so that the first shot sets the theme for everything. There are surprises in this movie, as there are in life. In 30 years, lives can have a lot of surprises, can go in all kinds of different directions, and this movie gives itself the freedom to have that spontaneity. That's what I like about it.
First-time director, James L. Brooks. Boy, he's the hero of the year, I think. Coming up next at the movies, the tragic story of a small-time hustler and his beautiful wife. They both wanted to be stars.
This cold you gave me.
Now we continue with my list of the 10 best films of the year with a very unpleasant but well-made motion picture called Star 80, the dramatization of the life and death of Playboy playmate Dorothy Stratton, who was murdered in 1980 by her two-bit hustler husband after she tried to dump him after she became Playmate of the Year and began a love affair with film director Peter Bogdanovich. Mariel Hemingway plays Dorothy, Cliff Robertson is Playboy publisher Hugh Hefner, and Eric Roberts really walks away with this movie as the creepy husband Paul Snider, so obsequious when he meets his idol Hefner at a party at the Playboy Mansion West.
Mr. Hefner, Paul Snider, Paul, Mr. Hefner.
If a man has a right to find God in his own way, he has a right to go to the devil in his own way. Here's another. Descriptions of murder, which we consider a crime, are acceptable in art and literature, but descriptions of sex are prohibited. Our society has put hate above love, favored killing over living. Right? Pretty close. But I think I said favored death over life.
What? I don't understand. What?
He's quoting me. Old ones at that. That's great stuff. Fine piece of work. Fine. God, I feel Hefner and I are old friends. You know, I think we even have some mutual buddies. Is Telly at this bash? Telly? Savalas. Telly Savalas. He's an old pal. Thought I might see him here. Oh! Hey, Bobo. Bobo. Bobo, I want you to meet Dorothy Stratton.
Hi.
Bobo. Bobo Weller. I still got your centerfold on my wall.
Oh, wow.
Your favorite book is The Height Report, like Rod Stewart, Linda Ronstadt, and Bob Staggs, right?
Oh, wow.
I know that bod anyway.
What's your name?
Snyder. Dorothy, Paul.
That is one of the weirdest scenes I have ever seen. I mean, it's almost comic, except there is this overlay of death there, a strange, strange character. Star 80 focuses more on the husband than on Dorothy, and it's a gripping portrait of a kid with his values out of whack, a kid so desperate to become a star. And who is that kid? Well, the surprise in Star 80 is that it's both Dorothy and her husband, and they both end up dying because of their dreams. This is one of those time capsule movies, I think, that 100 years from now is going to have a lot to say about these times in which we live. Star 80 is an unpleasant film, yes, but it is a finely made one.
It is a well-made film, and it was pretty close to making my top 10. It didn't quite get into the top 10, but I admire it. And you know, it has the same problem, if you will, and it's an insoluble problem, as In Cold Blood, which is we know the ending. We know everybody's going to die. We know that at the beginning, and so everything has this overlay of sadness and poignancy, even the high points. So it is a depressing movie, and it is a good one, too.
Okay.
Here's another movie from my list of the year's 10 best films. This is a brand new movie called El Norte that's just going into release now around the country. It opened in Chicago just in time to make my 1983 list. It opened in New York in January. It's a beautiful, simple, heartbreaking epic about two young Guatemalan Indians, a brother and a sister, who make the long trip north to Los Angeles. And that might make the movie sound like a grimy, grim, earnest documentary, but this is a fiction film with great poetry in its images, and here's an example of that from early in the film when the young woman comes looking for her missing mother. Those butterflies are a Mayan symbol for disquiet in the land, for troubled times. And those two young Indians are in the midst of an upheaval. Their village has been attacked by armed men. Their parents have been killed, and they decide to go north to the promised land, to California. El Norte tells the story of their journey up through Mexico, their adventures trying to cross the border, and their tricky but sometimes funny adjustment to life in Los Angeles. It's a film that isn't afraid to have real emotions and to reveal its heart to us, and I think it's a great film.
It didn't make my list, but it's a good one, and so I guess I just like 10 films better. The one thing I admire about this film is the way it puts flesh on statistics. We read about, you know, thousands of illegal aliens trying to enter this country every year, and we learn who two of them are, and they're just not raw numbers or some caricature of who comes across into this country. These are people with hopes and dreams. They pay a price to come here. It's a very difficult decision. Would they be better back or here? It's a rich film, not an easy film, and I'll tell you this. After seeing this film, I'm never going to read another story in the newspaper about illegal aliens, so-called, without thinking of this movie. It's a terrific little picture. Coming up next at the movies, a suburban kid and his sexy dreams.
Just take those old records on the shelf. I said listen to them.
The next film on my list is Risky Business, a fabulous teenage sex comedy in a year full of lousy teenage sex comedies. The difference, Risky Business remembers both the painful realities and the exquisite fantasies of the teenage years. And here is one of the fantasies of a teenage boy growing up in a wealthy suburb. It's a nightmare that opens the film, mixing the joy of sex with the terror of final exams.
Then I see her. I mean, what she's doing there, I don't know, because she doesn't live there. Who's there, she says. Joe, I say. What are you doing here? I don't know what I'm doing here. What are you doing here? I'm taking a shower, she says. Then I give her. You want me to go? No, she says. I want you to wash my back. So now I'm getting enthusiastic about this dream. So I go to her, but she's hard to find through all the steam and stuff. I keep losing her. Finally, I get to the door. And I find myself in a room full of kids taking their college boards. I'm over 3 hours late. I've got 2 minutes to take the whole test. I've just made a terrible mistake. I'll never get to college. My life is ruined.
Do you know that one of the most common dreams, apparently,
Yes.
is being unprepared for that final exam?
I have that dream myself. Why did I forget that I signed up for this class?
I know. I haven't studied the language. It's in German. I don't know a word of German. That scene lets us know right away that Risky Business is special. as does the film's main relationship between the two talented young actors in this movie, Tom Cruise as the suburban kid and Rebecca De Mornay as the hooker who uses him and then trusts him. This film contains more than just some laughs and some sex. That would be enough. This film also casts a jaundiced eye toward the great distance between the classes in the United States, the hooker's class and the suburban's kids. And it's a wonderful film by first-time director Paul Brickman.
It's on my list, too. I thought it was terrific. I enjoyed it. The performances, the direction, the script. Once again, I think we get back to the script, which takes all of those cliches that have been made so familiar and so boring in all of the teenage sex movies and that cares enough to really see how these situations really do affect teenagers, how they would talk. Not that it's necessarily a very realistic movie, but it's realistic in its satire.
In the emotions, certainly.
Right. Next at the movies, we're going to talk about my choice for the best film of the year, and then we're going to talk about Gene's choice, too.
We're placed here with certain talents and capabilities, and it's up to each one of us to use those talents and capabilities as best you can.
My choice for the #1 film of the year, the best film of 1983, is a film called The Right Stuff, a thrilling and quirky and funny epic about the first Americans into space. The movie started with the first flight to break the sound barrier, and then it followed the progress of the American space program as it got combined with a slick public relations program designed to take rough and ready test pilots and groom them as idealized astronauts. And here's how that turned out at an astronaut's press conference.
And the flight was canceled. Is it true we could have beat the Russians by 2 weeks? And why didn't we send a man in space instead of a monkey?
I think we ought to be forthright, gracious, and magnanimous about this and say, well, the Russian guys just beat the pants off us, that's all. And there's no sense in kidding ourselves about that, but now that the space age has begun, I think there's going to be plenty of work for everybody.
Who will be the second man in space?
I mean, who's going to be the first free man into space, huh?
Magazine. We know it's going to be Glenn. Just tell us when it's going to be.
That's a secret.
I like the way The Right Stuff combined that kind of social reporting with history, political satire, and some really great special effects shots where we ride along in the plane that breaks the sound barrier and the Mercury capsules that carry the astronauts into space. I thought The Right Stuff was a bold, original film that took a lot of chances and stretched itself and stretched the audience, and it's clearly, for me, the best film of 1983.
And here's a surprise maybe for you. I agree 100%. Of all the films, this was the one I thought that had the biggest, boldest vision and carried it off beautifully. There wasn't a single scene in the picture that I didn't like. And I'll tell you, there has been so much press about this film not doing so great at the box office. Who cares?
That's right. It's not important.
They're making the film seem like damaged goods. It's not damaged goods. It's a great film, and I hope everyone sees it. Okay, now my countdown in this space mode that we are in right now. My countdown of the top 10 movies in 1983. Number 10 is The Big Chill, the bittersweet 60s college reunion comedy. Number 9, Risky Business, a comedy about a teenager's sexual and social awakening. Number 8, Eric Rome's French comedy, Pauline at the Beach, 5 characters chasing their vision of love. In 7th position, Silkwood, with Meryl Streep in a terrific working-class movie. And number 6, The Year of Living Dangerously, following an Australian journalist covering the Indonesian 1965 revolution. Number 5 is Star 80, following 2 characters who most of all want to be stars. Number 4 on my best 10 list, Ingmar Bergman's epic drama, Fanny and Alexander. Number 3 is the film of Harold Pinter's play, Betrayal, a shocking case study of marital infidelity starring Ben Kingsley and Jeremy Irons. And number 2, Terms of Endearment, with its 3 great performances by McClane, Nicholson, and Winger. My number 1 movie of the year, The Right Stuff, an American epic about technology and human values influenced by the media age.
That's amazing. That means that our first and second films are the same. I think that's the first time in history that we've agreed even that much.
We've been doing this for 15 years?
15 years at least together. Yeah, here's a complete list of my top 10 films for 1983. Number 10, The Return of Martin Gere, a medieval romance that asserts a woman's right to choose her own lover. Number 9, Risky Business, a tricky teenage love affair. 8th place, Say Amen Somebody, the rambunctious gospel documentary. 7th, Silkwood, starring Meryl Streep in the story of an angry American worker. 6th place, Testament, with a great performance by Jane Alexander as a mother holding her family together after nuclear war. Number 5, El Norte, Gregory Nava's epic about Latin American immigrants, a beautiful film. In fourth place, Ingmar Bergman's Fanny and Alexander. He says it's his last film. I hope it's not. Third, The Year of Living Dangerously, starring Mel Gibson, Sigourney Weaver, and Linda Hunt. Second place, the heartbreaking new movie, Terms of Endearment. And tops on my list, The Right Stuff, the astronaut picture. So,
I like your list pretty much.
I like your list pretty much too, except for The Big Chill. That's the only one on your list that I wouldn't have on mine.
That's it for the best movies in 1983. Next week, the worst. The stinkers of the year. Roger and I picking the worst movies in 1983. That's next time, and until then, we'll see you at the movies.